Well, hello, Facebook friends. Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. Hopefully, you're all safe at home watching us and want to learn a little bit more about CHP's thoughts on the pandemic that we're all wading our way through. Today, we've got CHP leader Rod Taylor, and I hope that you'll take a few minutes to listen in on some thoughts looking back and looking forward at the pandemic.
Yeah. We're enjoying the first rays of spring sunshine here, although we've still got about a foot of snow on the ground in northern BC, but the sun is shining and that's hopeful.
Yeah, we just saw some bulbs starting to come up, some first signs of spring over in Ontario.
The only bulbs coming up around here are light bulbs. So
yeah, so we realize that many of you might have your regular schedules disrupted. Maybe some of you are still working regular hours. Maybe some of you are working longer hours with everything that's happening. But what we're going to try and do is do some more of these Facebook Live videos. We can't do the in-person events that we would normally be doing. Many of those have been canceled or postponed. So starting out today and hopefully going forward over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing some more of these Facebook Live videos, keep you up to date and informed.
So first of all, we don't know if any of our listeners have been directly impacted. We've all been impacted by the COVID-19, the precautions and changes to our schedule, changes to our incomes in some cases, our travel plans. But if anyone listening is a member of a family that's been directly impacted by the illness, we certainly extend our thoughts and prayers to you. All of us, I think, are sharing in the concern of what is happening around the world, not only in our country, but in other countries as well. And so it's a very interesting time, but a time of concern for all of us. And we share that time with you. I think I got back just sort of in the nick of times about 3 weeks ago from the United States, where I was at CPAC, and that probably was the last big gathering of its sort before the restrictions started to come on. It was a great place to be. I was happy to be there and hear some high-level American leaders talking about some of the same things we're concerned about, freedom and prosperity and all those things, but all that has been sort of swept aside in the news cycles by the concern about COVID-19.
Yes. And in terms of that, CHP puts out every week communiques, and sometimes additional to that speaks out, and we put them out via email, and we put them out on our Facebook group, and I hope that many of you read them every week, maybe reread them, and that's what happened to me. As all of these precautions started to come and the Prime Minister started to really our Prime Minister started to take everything seriously about this this virus, I thought back to a recent communique, and it was almost a month ago. It was February 25th that a communique went out called Coronavirus, Is Canada Doing Enough? And it was by Rod Taylor with me here today. And so I went back over it and I highlighted a few parts because they are very relevant, and they were things that should have been done at that time that they're finally doing now. And it seems as though now they're going all out, whereas some precautionary measures back then might have deflected some of the major concerns we have today. So back then already, Rod Taylor wrote, in the past few weeks, an unknown virus has come crashing onto the world stage, no longer a rumor, but now a full-blown shadow of death, no longer lurking in dark places, but lunging and striking. So that was already in February that he's writing that, and it seems as though some of our Canadian politicians weren't fully twigged on at that time, because he goes on to write that at that time, the Prime Minister was out in Africa. He was all over the place. He was very concerned, it seemed, about his image with the UN. So he's So Rod wrote, the Prime Minister must put his selfies and UN ambitions on hold and deal with the two great challenges facing Canada today. And back then it was the rail blockades. That's almost a distant memory now, but we know how much trouble that caused. And so that was the one great challenge. And the other one, the protection of Canadians from the worst potential disease epidemic in our history. Mm-hmm. And when I read that, I was almost tempted at that time to say, are we maybe overstating it a bit? Because it was serious then, but now those words ring truer perhaps than even they did at first. But it was a serious warning, and we really wish that they'd taken it more seriously. So the communique goes on to say, from our borders must be protected from the terror of disease for which we are not prepared. And temperature checks are not enough. We must have short-term isolation and quarantine protocols in place. Travel and imports from high-risk locations must be restricted. Well, now they're all banned, but if they had started restricting them back then, we might not be in the tough shape we're in already. And if imagine Italy had done that right off the bat, right? So let's see, just finishing off here. The citizens of this country need to know that the Prime Minister takes these things seriously. Yeah, now he does, right? Our future as a nation may depend upon full engagement and transparency. So, Rod, you wrote those words. What do you think now?
Well, we probably could have written them a couple of weeks earlier, but we just didn't have the information. But certainly the Prime Minister at that time, he finally came back to this country because of the rail blockades, which went on for weeks. And you know what? Now he's doling out, I think it's $82 billion. Obviously, that's a lot of money. It's more than a deficit that we would have expected for sure. And that's going to go down in his legacy. Now, in this case, we do support, there is a need to support those that are hurting and probably even businesses and so on, because this is a crisis unlike any we've ever faced. But just think about it. How badly was our economy hurt during those several weeks of rail blockades? If the Prime Minister had been here dealing with them, our economy would be in better shape now, and we'd be better able to help those who need our help. And even on the border crossings, we're still concerned. Yes, he's made major, statements about not allowing any non-citizens other than, with a few exceptions, into the country. But I've seen reports that Pakistan, for instance, people traveling from Pakistan, this was reported on Rebel News, are getting better checks, more thorough checks in their own country in Pakistan than they are when they arrive in Canada. They're basically handed a brochure and asked, some questions, but it's not really what you would call a screening or a thorough check. As well, I think some of the border crossings where we've had illegal or undocumented people crossing our border from the United States, I have heard rumors that those are still in place. Whereas, if you come in through an airport, through Pearson or whatever, maybe you get at least someone looks you in the eye and has can express their concern or give you a piece of paper. What about people that walk across the border and they will end up getting free medical Canadian healthcare at taxpayer expense? Nothing's free, but anyway, we're concerned that there still hasn't been an adequate response in some ways. All of us are hunkered down and enduring this self-isolation and social distancing and all of those concepts that are going to go down, become part of our language in the future, I'm sure. But anyway, the thing is now that we are moving in the direction of protectionism, protecting our people from the spread of disease. I'm glad that has taken place in spite of the delay. So we do stand with the Prime Minister in terms of helping Canadians stay as safe as we can. We don't know where this thing's going to go, when it will end, how we will, how many people will be directly affected by it, but we certainly believe that it is a time of kind of extraordinary measures.
Yeah, the I think the lessons learned from some other jurisdictions is it can be slowed down and made far more manageable in terms of our healthcare providers if people take precautions. And so, when we hear about these precautions, do it for their sake, do it for the sake of the doctors and nurses, so they don't get swamped by a wave of people getting it. It's far easier to help 100 people if you can do it 10 a day than if you have to do it all in an afternoon, right? So that's
Exactly.
really the
Yeah, exactly.
lesson that we should echo from the other government officials too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to encourage all of you, if you are not receiving communiques, if you're not receiving these commentaries that we put out every week, you can go to chp.ca and sign up for them. There's no cost. We put them out every week. You can pass them along, forward them to friends and neighbors. It's a good time to do things via email. If you appreciated our talk today, you might want to share that on Facebook with some friends. And we do put the communiques out on Facebook as well, so you can read them there. And we are hoping that this time will be a good time of reflection for people as well, as they're in some self-isolation, etc.
Well, we certainly remember with you that God is still on the throne, that this is a time of trial and testing for really the whole world. For Canadians, we're focused on our challenges here, both economic and health challenges. But it is a time for reflection, as Peter said, and a time to just call on the God who is in control of the universe and ask for his mercy and grace with our people as we go through this together. Also, something to remember is that, the God who is in control has standards, and really the world has failed to live up to those standards in many ways, protection of innocent human life and those types of things. And so it's a good time for us to recommit and rededicate our lives to walking according to the principles that God's laid out, because he does want to bless us and bless this nation. But how can he do it when we're continually violating his precepts and his commandments? In the coming weeks, next week, we're hoping to have Pastor Kevin Kavanaugh with us next Thursday. He has agreed to do that. We never know these days what might change for anybody's life. But Pastor Kavanaugh has been involved in the One Accord, which is a tremendous grouping of ministries committed to the same principles that we are concerned about. And we look forward to having him with us next week. And we look forward to having you join us again for our next CHP Talks. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless. Take care, and I hope to see you next week.